I'm Bee.
And I'm Renske.
We are so grateful that you are here.
Welcome to School of Joy. Welcome back to another episode of School of Joy. And today we're going to be talking about Bee's journey. And I think there's a lot of wisdom to be shared of your journey, Bee. So I'm excited actually to hear more about it. Of course, I've been part of it for a big chunk of it. But maybe before we dive into where you started more the spiritual deep dive, can you bring us with you in your journey leading up to when you chose to dive deeper within yourself?
Yeah. So I've been looking at myself for a long time before that, because as I've explained in previous episodes, life wasn't all that happy for me. And I think, we've touched on the law of love in previous episodes. I think I was just going around and around in the acknowledgement phase, which was supportive. It's not to take away from all that work that I did, but there was still a lot of dense energy, I think, in my life, in my creations, and even though life had improved, I think in general there was this feeling of that life was hard, life was a challenge, or life wasn't easy then, put it that way. Life didn't sort of flow easily. And I think, it's been interesting in the lead up to this episode, because I've been struggling almost to see the shift in myself. These shifts are so subtle, really. We don't even almost notice. So I asked for support. I asked for support from you, and I asked support from one of my good friends. And it's been a nice experience to reflect on it, because I think even though life had improved up until that point, I think there was still a lot of judgment in my field, probably a lot of judgment on myself. I had done a lot of inner work, but life still didn't really feel overly joyful. And I was still getting triggered by the same old stuff. So maybe there was judgment and frustration about that.
That you kept coming back to the same triggers, you mean?
Yeah, really frustrating, I think, just cycling back and back and back. And now, of course, understanding, the law of love, and I just wasn't ever really getting into true acceptance of what was going on. And then I guess as a part of that, also then judgment of others. I think I had done a lot of finding more forgiveness in my heart for others, but I think, there was still a lot of judgment in my field of other people. And maybe not, maybe holding people in more compassion, but not truly accepting them for where they were at. And I think, in one of our last episodes we talked about acceptance, and I think I spent a lot of time trying to control the outcomes of my life, not sitting in acceptance. And I hold that old self in compassion, because I think, life had been quite unsafe for me. And so trying to control everything was just a way of trying to keep myself safe, really. And I hope I did that justice in the acceptance episode, because that is, radically different now. And then I think really what kind of really drew me to the Master's Way was this sense of not belonging. I'd experienced a lot of loneliness in the years leading up to joining the Master's Way. And not quite, didn't really quite understand why, because I had a lot of people around me. I've got a big family. I've always had lots of friends, but I felt really disconnected and really lonely. And I think the feeling of loneliness was one that I had probably been denying for a long time. And in those years leading up to signing up for the Master's Way, I had really connected with that feeling of loneliness and really acknowledged it. But that was hugely painful, actually, because I just didn't really understand why. And so I was sort of searching. I felt that I needed a community of people. I've never never felt quite felt like I fitted in anywhere.
Mm. Sounds familiar.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I think one of the most profound moments we had actually in our group recently was when we were all sort of nodding along about how strange we've always all felt.
Mm.
And I've always felt that, I've always had lovely friends, but I've always felt like just a bit strange. And perhaps hidden those parts of myself to try and sort of fit in. But of course, they're not really been living authentically. And so as a result of that, doing that for sort of 3 decades, feeling just disconnected from others, from myself, from my true self. And so I was sort of searching for somewhere to belong. And I I had a complex relationship with religion, put it that way, religion. And um yeah, and I'd started meditating a few years before, and found it really helpful. I had actually had hugely positive physical outcomes from meditating, like hugely
Mhm.
positive things that were troubling me for years and years before just disappeared. And yeah, and I meditated throughout my pregnancy, and there was something around that experience, bringing life into this world and meditating during that pregnancy, that I suddenly felt much more connected to nature, um, to God, I guess, although I didn't really understand that that's what it was. Um, and then my daughter was born, and I, you know, still then was struggling with loneliness. I had less time to meditate, as I'm sure you can appreciate at the moment, Renske. And I guess that feeling then of being disconnected, and lonely sort of came back. Um, yeah, and then, I mean, I've shared this before, but my good friend, my longest friend, she had started the Master's Way, and I could see such shifts in her, um, that I was just really curious. And I think, having had that experience when I was pregnant of feeling connected, I kind of knew instinctively that's what I needed more of.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's beautiful, actually, that Ren gave you that gift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, yeah, quite amazing that year, really. Because it
Mm.
was a really difficult year for us. I mean, it was 2020, it was COVID, so it's a difficult year for everybody. But I think 2020, in a way, gave me a lot of space, which I perhaps hadn't had previously in life. There was a lot of quietness, and I think that was really good for me.
Yeah, I remember when you reached out and you indeed shared like, "Oh, I've seen so many changes in Nia. I don't know
Mm.
what you guys are doing, but I sign up," so to
Yeah.
say. That was kinda like your line. I do remember though, um, you had a bit of hesitation because I guess hearing you now, what you were then longing for was this sense of community and this sense of group, and belonging. Um, and your hesitation was around we're doing this online.
Mm.
And so maybe can you share a bit about that? Because I told you back then, like from my experience, I can understand that through the mind, we can think that working online together is maybe a bit more disconnected than face to face. And to some degree, I
Mm.
still agree.
Mm.
Um, but I said the way we connect through this course is so deep that me personally, I always feel such a sense of belonging every time we meet with groups. So maybe can you share a bit about your experience in that?
Yeah, I mean, I really was searching for something in person.
Mm.
Um, and and yeah, and I was hesitant about the fact it was online, but it hasn't made any difference at all. It's yeah, and it's just funny really because even just prior to recording, we did a little connection together, and I felt that connection so strongly, in my being, not, it doesn't matter that you're in a different country.
Mm.
And I frequently with my buddies, we'll go into meditation separately, not even necessarily at the same time. We'll just send each other, love and connect with each other through meditation. And that's really powerful. And
Mm.
so, yeah, I mean, if anyone listening is curious about the Master's Way, but hesitant about the fact it's online, it, it just, it doesn't matter. And it's not to say that my preference wouldn't be that we could do it in person.
100%, yeah.
But I mean, in modern life, how possible is that really? And
Mm.
I definitely couldn't be in your group if I did it in person because, we live in different, it would be quite a commute every week to come to the Netherlands. It would be worth it. But
Mm.
yeah, so yeah, it just hasn't mattered at all.
Mm. I also find it quite special to feel that every week, that
Mm,
when we do start dropping down from the mind to the heart, you're going into a different dimension. So there's no time and space really when you sit in heart frequency, and that's really, I guess, what you're describing is,
mm,
then all of a sudden when we go into meditation and we learn to connect from our heart's consciousness, the distance doesn't matter anymore because there is no distance through heart's consciousness. It
mm,
just all is one, and it all is connected from that perspective, from that energy. And in the end, we are all energetic beings. And yeah, I feel that too. That the Master's Way really, actually, because there is a physical distance, it teaches us that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We're
mm,
all connected anyway. Yeah, beautiful.
mm. And then, of course, when we have got together, it's like just been like magic to be
Mm,
together.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, and I guess just speaking as well, just from my experience, because our group starts at 5:30 in the UK, and so that's dinner time for us. So it's quite a chaotic time. My daughter's only 4, so she's quite tired by that point. And yeah, so quite often I sort of rush from dinner to come and sit down, and then we go straight into a connection. And it's just really, that process of shifting from crazy everyday normal life to this connection is like, it's literally like, I can feel myself in that connection kind of coming down into my heart space. And like, yeah, I mean, that shift just from A to B is so staggering to me that I can even do that. And, I mean, that's taken practice, but yeah, it's really beautiful.
Mm. Yeah, and the group really supports in that. I always feel as well that it's so much easier to drop into heart space when you do it together. It's so much more expanded. So it's
Mm.
I have that same shift, from dinner, chaotic dinner, to then, dropping into heart meditation, um, which, if I was to do it alone, is is doable. I can, but yeah,
Mm.
it's much easier in group. Yeah.
Mm.
How do you find that for yourself, in this journey, to have the support of the group? What did it give you?
I mean, so much, Renske. I wish I could just show you in my heart what it's given me. I don't think I'll do it justice in words, but that feeling of loneliness, I haven't experienced that really in the last 2 years at all. Um, and I think at first the connection with you guys sort of felt subtle. Um, and now, I mean, now we've only got a year left, and I'm sort of like, I don't know what it's going to be like on the other side. I just feel, yeah, I don't know how I'm going to put it into words. I just love you all so deeply. You
Mm.
know, I feel that, yeah, I can honestly get quite emotional about it. Like, just, um, yeah, I don't know, I'm gonna end up crying. I just love you guys, and
Yeah.
yeah, you've just given me so much, like such a sense of belonging, um, and the way that we can all hold space for each other is so just like nothing I've ever experienced before, and I think that's why I'm so passionate about it. And you know, I really do believe the master's way is either for you or it's not, and it's all in
Yes.
divine timing. But I would love for everyone to experience what we have, because it's just beautiful.
Mm.
And I haven't done it justice there, but hopefully.
No, I mean, the feeling is absolutely mutual, you know, and I think it's not just beautiful for ourselves, but it's also so beautiful for the lives that we touch, you know, your
Mm,
relationship with your husband, your relationship with your daughter, your relationship with your family, you know. I've seen your relationships also transform in how you respond to them, and
mm,
that might not have been um your sort of goal um, to sign up for the Masters way. It wasn't your goal to change your relationships, but I've heard you many times speak about, you know, how massively that has changed.
mm.
Yeah, so that's so beautiful. Is there anything in particular in that that you've sort of surprised yourself with along the journey, that like in relationships, like in that change?
Yes, yeah, I mean, yeah, hugely. I mean, my relationship with my father, especially. You know, we've had a very difficult relationship, and you know, I've spent years in therapy, really trying to kind of figure it out. Um, and I hadn't even been on the Master's Way very long. We worked out just before we started recording. It was about 6 months,
Mm.
maybe even less. And you know, I saw my dad, and um, he did something a bit crazy, which is classic him. And I found it funny. I just found it like not in like a kind of mocking way. I was just sort of like, I found it humorous, and like, even my husband was triggered by it, and I was just like, oh, it's just who he is, isn't it? He means well. He's just, you know, done it in his sort of funny way, and um, yeah, I mean, I can't even put into words how much of a huge shift that is for me.
Mm.
And that has you know, that has continued, because I think it's quite easy when you have an experience like that to think, oh, maybe that was just a one-off. But um, well, yeah, every time we have an interaction now, he does something that would totally triggered me before. And it literally feels like water off a duck's back. And I'm able to hold him in so much compassion now. And it's not to say that I condone some of his actions, or agree with them, or wish it wasn't different, because, you know, I would love to have a close relationship with him, of course, which child wouldn't want to have a good relationship with their father? Um, but there's so much peace in there now, and it comes from this radical acceptance of
Mm.
others, um, that I just didn't have before. Um, I mean, it's a huge gift to me, that just even if that was the only gift that came from this course, that would be so massive. Yeah. And it's that situation on repeat, really. I think what happens now, where previously, and I mean, this is, you know, truthfully, this is a work in progress. So it's
Mm.
not like this is
There's a finish
just,
line or anything. No. Mm.
yeah, exactly. But I think what I'm able to do now, even when I am triggered by someone else's behavior, I'm able to go more into observation.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it's like zooming out and going into observation of, "Oh, okay, oh, there's a trigger here." And rather than going straight to judgment, it's just more that I'm able to get curious about what that says about the energy that I'm holding.
Mm.
Um, and that's just such a huge gift in my relationships with others. Um, yeah, I mean, a radical shift.
Mm. Yeah, so true. You know, it's our lives is are the mirrors of our own energy always, and especially our families. You know, they are part of our group consciousness. So, and we will probably even speak about that in one of the upcoming episodes as well, because we call that aspect work, where the outside world reflects our own aspects, our own energy, and
Mm,
it's been so beautiful to witness you really doing that work, you really diving deep into that work, and then seeing your reality, your perspective change,
mm,
and your view on life literally like change.
mm,
Um, Maybe for those listening, can you explain a bit? Because I can imagine if someone's listening and they're a bit intrigued by the work and the inner work, um, a question can be like, how did you do that? You know, so what are sort of tools that you use um, in the last couple years that you have used and that you continue to use to shift that energy? So when you do get triggered, when you do feel or observe yourself going into judgment, maybe, how do you then shift that into a deeper acceptance within yourself and therefore acceptance for others around you?
mm. Well, I mean, I think, you know, the other big shift that I've had that is totally relevant to this question is actually the judgment of myself as
Yeah.
well. So I think the most important thing when you experience that trigger is that you don't then jump into judgment of yourself, because if you judge your own judgment, that's just not
Mm.
helpful.
Mhm.
And again, it's a work in progress, but I think I am able to hold myself in so much more compassion. And I think there's been so many teachings, um, you know, come through Ishtar, the channel, that has supported kind of like my view of the world and of what we're doing here in this life, that this is just an experience that we are having, and that there is no right or wrong way to do that. So when I experienced judgment, then I'm able to just be like, well, I'm just a human being. It doesn't, it's not a reflection of whether I'm succeeding or failing. It's just, this is just something that is asking for my curiosity.
Mm.
Um, And sometimes I think that's just about, you know, I keep doing this thing with Tom where I say, "Right, I'm not going to speak for my very spiritual self here. I'm just going to speak completely for my ego, but I need to get this out because I'm really judging either myself or someone else." And he's like, "Just let it out." Um, and I think just doing that is sometimes just speaking my truth, which, you know, sometimes is quite ugly. Um, and then, but then holding that in compassion, um, and quite often as well, I'll go into meditation and just ask for support, especially if something feels quite stuck. You
Mhm.
know, a judgment feels quite stuck. Then quite often I will just, you know, frequently go into meditation, you know, every day and just say, "Hi, I just need some support with this," or, you know, whatever meant to show me, then show me. Um, yeah, and it's just about sitting with it and accepting it, really. Perhaps accepting that it's not shifted yet.
Mhm.
Um, and I think one of the things I'm feeling the more I go on with this work is that the shifting of it does come, and I can trust that it will come at the right time.
Mm.
Um, like, I think that thing with my dad, you know, the reason why it shifted so quickly is because it was just really ready to shift.
Yeah.
And there's other things, other triggers that are, you know, long standing with me now that I'm just trying to hold in compassion and not judge myself, and just know that if I continue to raise my frequency, go into meditation, ask for support, not judge myself, sit in acceptance, that eventually those things will shift.
Hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's such a different energy from, a couple years back, trying to control outcomes, The opposite of that is, of course, completely trust that it's always in divine timing. So that's beautiful. And, so true also what you were sharing, about, sometimes it's just really, really nice to just vent, to just let out what you have on your mind. And then from there, indeed, you're acknowledging, okay, this is how I'm feeling. This is my
Mm,
ego truth. Now let's come back and sit and breathe and bring this to a deeper divine truth. So I feel
mm,
actually acceptance and compassion for this part of me that is so reactive. Yeah, that's
mm.
beautiful. I love that. Mm.
And it's not to say that, just talking about control as well, it's not to say that I don't still shift into that. In fact, like a few weeks ago, I was a bit unwell and I had a bit of time on my hands because I was just resting, and I got really into my ego was really loud about School of Joy,
Mm,
and I went into a place of control about it. I really wanted to, I really want the School of Joy to grow because I'm really passionate about what we're doing. But I went into a very ego place with it. And I mean, I feel sorry for you, Renske, because I was messaging you a lot. and
yeah.
but then I was, yeah, I was just working here actually one day on my laptop. And suddenly it was like, I'm actually just sitting in control of this. I was able to observe myself in
Mhm,
that control. And then having that acknowledgement was so supportive. And then I went into meditation, and actually, I feel I've had guidance that I can just trust.
mm.
And then so my energy has radically shifted. And I was sharing that with Nia the other day, and she really reflected that back to me, like, B, what a huge shift, because she's known me since I was 3, so she's seen a lot of my controlling behavior around my own life.
Yeah.
So it still happens, but I think that shift into acknowledgement, into observing it, was quite quick and didn't need any external support to do that. That just happened very organically, which is, yeah, I mean, a big, big thing.
Mm, beautiful.
Sorry about that,
No,
Winston.
that's all right. I was actually a bit laughing with it because it's so familiar, like yeah, probably a couple of years back I would have been the same. And I think for me, um already like the pregnancy, that gave me a shift in that energy already, more so, even more so, to trust, and as I said to you before, like I'm at this stage of my life where everything is very much about simplicity, keeping things very
Mm,
simple and basic. This is a year of foundational work, not putting too much out there and giving,
mm,
um, because my energy is just needed elsewhere with Lily.
mm,
And I just simply trust, that things unfold as they should. Not to say that same to you. Sometimes my ego mind is like, "Ooh, very excited," and then it's trying to do like a lot again. And then,
mm,
as you said, the practice is to then observe it, come back to it, and shift energy, and then move forward from there. So it's beautiful to be able to do that. And I think you mentioned this in another episode. It's like a muscle you train, it's like
mm,
a spiritual muscle. Um, that connection, becoming aware of where we connect with ego will, and becoming aware that we can then shift that also to follow our spirit will, divine will, however you want to call it, God will. And yeah, also not being judgmental of that, because that is the constant dance and the constant learning. So it's, yeah, as I said before, it's been amazing to witness that within you because it also brings up a lot of reflection of my journey in that. Yeah.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think as well, I mean, that's another thing that the master's way has really given me is this sense of trusting in the flow of life, and that includes suffering, that includes when
Yeah.
things aren't so good. Last week, for instance, we're recording this at the end of February, and last week it was quite gloomy, and I really got hit a wall with winter. I was just done with winter, and I have historically very much struggled with winter and the lack of light. And then yesterday it was a really sunny day, and I went up into the mountains, and I was reminding myself of the fact that it's the law of relativity, right? Where there's
Yeah.
seasons to life, and I
Yeah.
was like, you know, um, that I wouldn't ever experience. Yesterday was so joyful and so peaceful, and had so much gratitude for being out in the sun. And of course, I wouldn't have that if it was like that every day, And the stark reflection from last week to yesterday then was huge. And I think so for me, even within my sufferings, there has been so much more trust that my path is unfolding as it should, especially when I can let go of the ego control.
Hmm.
And that is the energy I'm sitting in now around School of Joy, but in my life in general, that as long as I continue to nourish this connection with spirit and to trust that life will unfold as it should. And that's co-creation, which again I'm sure we'll talk about in another episode. But for instance, the way that is unfolding in my life right at this moment is that within my business, I am nearly fully booked for 2027.
Mm, wow.
I've never been this booked up before. And then and my ego was like, oh great, that's more time I could spend building a School of Joy. But then when I went into meditation and asked for guidance around that, the guidance was no, this space has opened up for you is for you to nourish yourself, because
Hmm.
right now I'm doing a lot. There's a lot going on self-development wise with the courses that I'm doing, and they're quite intense, and they're asking me to really look deeply at myself. And so it's just, I have been in this state of acceptance for a while now. And so this space that I need has opened up for me. And that's one of the reasons why I did go up in the mountains yesterday. It was one of my work days, but I was like, actually, I'm going to listen to this guidance. It feels so nourishing to my soul to go and do that.
Hmm.
And so I haven't necessarily done a dramatic amount of stuff in my business to create all of this, income that's coming in my
Yeah.
way. But I feel that I have been supported from a higher place for that to
Hmm.
unfold for me.
I mean, that is
Um,
also law of reflection, right? It's like it's not that law of reflection only reflects our shadow, it reflects where we've let in the light as well, and where
mm,
so all the inner work really um, will be reflected in your business too,
mm,
if we see life more from an abundance frequency, if we experience more abundance within us, it is inevitable that that will be the experience around us as well. Yeah,
mm,
that's just what it is. So that's wonderful, wonderful to hear, really. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And what an abundance that you've opened up so much space to even receive more for yourself at the
mm,
moment. Yeah, that's so beautiful.
yeah, it really is.
Beautiful. Last question, I think, moving forward with this way of living, I guess I would say, because that's how I see it. It's really like a new way of living. Um, are there any dreams, desires that you still have for yourself to manifest, to create?
I think it's really just more of the same.
Hmm.
I don't feel if you'd asked me at any point in the past, I'd always have a plan, like a 5-year,
Yeah.
10-year plan. I don't have that now.
Mm,
Um, I I feel this sense of abundance in my future. And I know that the only thing I really need to do for that is to just basically continue what I'm doing. Um, are there things in my life that still trigger me? Yes. Does my ego want those things to be resolved? Yes. Um, but I just trust the path that I'm on. And to answer a question really simply is the answer is no.
mm,
Um, I mean, I think I feel so much gratitude for where I've come from and where I am. Um, there was 15, 20 years of my life where I just didn't want to be here.
mm,
Um, and there were lots of moments within that time that I felt genuinely suicidal as well.
mm,
Um, if I'm being really honest, I mean, it's quite a triggering thing to talk about, but it is the truth.
mhm,
And even when I wasn't feeling suicidal, I would have quite happily not woken up the next morning, there wasn't peace and joy in my life. And um, I think that if I know that if I can shift from that to this, that is possible for anyone.
mm,
And I feel that I hope then, I guess, that in my future, that all of this work will support others to do the
mm,
same. Um, I mean, it's enough that it's just supported me and my family, and of course, then influencing our wider circle as well, because it just does. Um, but I think that if it can go on, I'm only 35, so I've got a lot of life left in me to live. Um, yeah, I would love to think that that I have something to give wider humanity as well. But I don't feel the need, even with the breathwork course that I'm doing, I have no idea what I'm going to do with that really. But I think there's something in it for the future, for others to draw on. And
mm,
I do really hope that I will inspire someone who's suffering in the way that I was, or maybe not as extreme, or maybe more extreme, to trust that they also have the capacity to change, because they do.
mm,
Um, you hear a lot of people writing other people off, and I just don't buy into it. I just don't buy
mm,
into it. Everyone, whether you're 80 or 12, you have the capacity to change and improve your life. Um, and I think, yeah, I mean, what the Masters Way has really given me is really safe space to do that, and a lot of support. Um, yeah.
mm. Couple beautiful things I hear you share, that there's always potential for everyone, regardless of where you come from. And the other wise thing that you said was about you can only be of service to others when you're first being of service to yourself. And I think Spirit is really guiding you to be of service to yourself a
Mm,
lot as well at the moment still. And then it will unfold. Yeah, I'm
mm,
sure it will, you know. That's my experience in life as well. If we allow that space and time for ourselves to be of service to our own light, it will shift in the way it's in the highest potential. Yeah,
mm,
to share that out to others and with others as well, which you're already doing, you know.
mm,
But that will keep unfolding. So I'm very excited to be witness of your journey and to co-create, to continue to co-create, because I absolutely love our co-creation at the moment.
mm.
So thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing your experience. for sharing your wisdom and for co-creating with me.
Well, thank you for holding space for all that growth. As I said, I can't put it into words, but I hope that you feel it, Renske, because you are amazing, and yeah, I would highly recommend Renske as a teacher if you're considering it.
Thank you. Shall we move on to our joy sparks?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Do you have one?
I do have one, yes, which is actually very related to the spiritual journey, not just your spiritual journey, but many spiritual journeys that I witness. I mean, if you really look at it, everyone has a spiritual journey, and it's simply the question whether you choose to live that consciously or not. And last Monday, was one of the last lessons with my Path of Mystery group, which is the last year of the Master's Way. And I just feel so much joy and gratitude from, I can even get emotional about it, from witnessing others shifting their energy and having a completely different life from 3 years ago. Um, one of the students, I remember her in the first year constantly doubting herself, constantly questioning, um, struggling to receive, struggling to accept herself, struggling to love herself. And last Monday, she shared how habitual it is now, how normal it is now for her every morning to sit and receive within her heart, to start from self-love, to start the day with self-love, and to ask for her divine presence to walk with her, to guide her throughout the day, so that when she does get triggered, when things do get a little bit harder, she feels supported. She has the capacity to observe it rather than to be overwhelmed by it or go into judgment of it. All that you just shared as well, and she finishes the day in gratitude, saying thanks to all the lessons, saying thanks to the joy in her life, but also saying thanks to the challenges in her life.
Oh,
And that really, like when she shared that, I was like, wow, that's such a massive shift in 3 years' time, which is maybe for our egos, like, oh, like 3 years, it's quite long. But if you look at it in a bigger perspective,
mm,
it's really short. You've been living your life, I think she's in her 50s, like you've been living your life for
mm,
50 years in a certain way where you continue to judge yourself. And then in 3 years' time, you shift completely
mm,
to living from so much self-love and acceptance, really. So that was my joy spark for this week.
mm.
Yeah.
I feel quite emotional listening to you speak, Renske. It's just, yeah, it's just so beautiful. Um, yeah. Yeah, so my joy spark was that I spent the weekend with Nia, who is, yeah, my oldest friend and who is just finishing Path of Mystery with you.
Mhm.
And yeah, as I said last week, I was feeling quite dense from this winter, and just being in her presence, I could feel my energy shifting. She held space for me to just share how I was feeling, which at the time when we first got together was a bit dense. And yeah, and then I was sort of the next day I was sort of reflecting. I had some space. I was driving for a while and I had some space, and I just was overcome with gratitude for just her in my life in general. We've been friends since we were 3. Our parents
Yeah.
met at church. And we've really been on a roller coaster together. There's been many ups and many downs. Um, and she, I think doing this journey together has been like absolute magic. I can't put into words really how much our relationship has changed. There's so much radical honesty within our relationship now, so much space holding. And also most importantly, actually, that we're just able to reflect to each other the other person's growth. Because as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, it's actually quite hard to see your growth. It's quite subtle. And I mean, she's changed. She's unrecognizable really from the person that she was before. And there's so much joy and peace in her life. And Um, and she's just able to reflect to me all the things that have, I made a list. I've got my list up on the screen here because I was struggling and of all the things that she was able to reflect to me, and that is such a huge gift.
Mm.
And she is just someone I'm just so deeply grateful for. She is one of my biggest gifts in life. And yeah, just on Sunday, I had so much gratitude for her and this journey that we're doing together. And yeah, I'm intrigued about what we're going to be like when we're in our 80s. We're going to be these two old spiritual ladies in the nursing home together. Because
Sharing
we
our
are going to be.
wisdom with others. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
yeah, going through life laughing. Hmm. That's so
Yeah.
special. That's so precious to have that in your life. Yeah.
I don't know if you
Wonderful.
know this as well, actually, Renske, but my middle name is Joy and her middle name is Joyce. Did you know that?
I knew actually, now you say that, I knew that, but I wasn't conscious of it.
Mm.
Yeah, that's
And
so beautiful.
we're also born 6 days apart as well.
No.
So we're both born into farming families. Like we were just meant to be, we were just meant
Yeah,
to be.
meant to meet in this life. Yeah.
Yeah.
You probably have been traveling already in many other lifetimes
Yeah,
together. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Hmm. Beautiful.
We'll soon take a short moment to ground and anchor together. If this conversation resonated and you'd like to go a little deeper, we'd love to welcome you into our Joy Circle, a monthly newsletter where we share extra reflections, meditations, and resources to support you. You can find us on Instagram at School of Joy Podcast, and we'd love for you to support us on our mission to spread more light and joy in the world by sharing with family and friends. You'll find all the links in the episode description. Thanks again for listening.
All right, let us ground and anchor. If you're listening, you can also take a moment with us, giving thanks to all the blessings in our life. Taking a deep breath in and breathing out with gratitude. Blessings to you all.
Mm.